I'm about to share with you a true horror story that happened in my life, one that still keeps me awake at night. It's not just a story I heard from someone else or read somewhere, this is something I lived through. Every word you're about to hear is real, every sound I'll describe still echoes in my mind, and every shadow I'll talk about still lingers when I close my eyes. It began when I moved into Briarwood House, an old, two-story home tucked away at the edge of a small rural town. I was looking for peace and quiet after a rough few years. Instead, I found something that would change the way I saw the world forever. The first day I stepped inside, the air felt heavy. Not dusty, not stale, just heavy, like it was pressing down on me. The realtor had smiled and told me, "It's an old place with character," but something about the way her eyes avoided mine told me there was more she wasn't saying. The walls were pale and cracked, the wooden floors groaned with every step, and the house seemed to breathe with a life of its own. I told myself I was imagining things. The first night was quiet, too quiet. No cars passing, no neighbors talking, just the constant hum of silence. I woke at 3:17 a.m. to the sound of footsteps upstairs. That startled me because I live alone. I froze in bed, listening. The steps were slow, deliberate, as if whoever it was knew exactly where they were going. They stopped right above my bedroom. Then, nothing. I barely slept after that. Over the next week, small things began to happen, things I couldn't explain. My coffee mug moved from the counter to the sink when I wasn't in the kitchen. The hallway light would flicker whenever I walked past. The upstairs guest room door, which I always kept closed, would be slightly open in the morning. I kept telling myself it was just my mind playing tricks. Then came the whispers. The first time, I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth when I heard it. A low, drawn-out voice saying something I couldn't understand. I thought it was the wind, but then I realized, the window was shut. I turned around slowly, my heart pounding. No one was there. The sound seemed to fade into the walls. A few nights later, I woke again at 3:17 a.m. This time it wasn't footsteps, it was the creak of a door opening. My bedroom door. I sat up, staring into the darkness. I could make out a tall, shadowy figure standing in the doorway. Its head was tilted slightly, as if it was curious about me. I couldn't see its face, but I could feel it watching. Then, without a sound, it stepped back into the hall and vanished. That was when I decided to start keeping the lights on at night. But even with the lights on, the shadows in that house seemed darker than they should be, as if they were alive, moving when I wasn't looking. One evening, I went up to the attic for the first time. The pull-down ladder groaned under my weight as I climbed. The air was thick and smelled faintly of rot. There were old boxes covered in dust, an antique rocking chair in the corner, and in the farthest shadow, something that caught my eye, a small wooden box with strange carvings. I opened it to find yellowed photographs of families I didn't recognize. But in every single photo, no matter the year or the setting, there was always a dark figure in the background. Sometimes in the corner, sometimes right behind someone, sometimes reflected in a mirror. My stomach turned. From that night on, the activity in the house became more aggressive. Doors would slam shut on their own. The shadow figure appeared more often, sometimes in the corner of my room, sometimes standing halfway up the staircase. The whispers grew louder, and sometimes they said my name. One night, I decided to record audio while I slept. When I played it back the next morning, my blood ran cold. For hours there was nothing but soft static, until 3:17 a.m., when I heard the sound of my bedroom door opening, followed by slow footsteps, and then, right next to the microphone, a deep, rasping voice whispering, "You shouldn't be here." That same night, I dreamt of drowning in a dark lake, hands pulling me under. I woke up gasping for air, only to find my bed sheets damp as if I had actually been in water. By this point, I was too afraid to invite anyone over, but I told my friend Jacob about it. He laughed it off, but agreed to stay the night to prove nothing was wrong. That night, at exactly 3:17, I woke to the sound of Jacob screaming. I ran to the guest room and found him standing in the middle of the room, eyes wide, shaking. "It was here," he said, his voice trembling. "It was right next to me." Jacob refused to stay any longer. He left in the middle of the night, and I was alone again. The final straw came a few nights later. I was lying in bed, trying to stay awake until morning, when I felt something climb onto the bed. The mattress sank under the weight. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. A cold hand brushed my face, and I heard that same rasping voice say, "It's your turn." The next morning, I packed a bag and left Briarwood House. But here's the thing, I didn't sell it. I couldn't. It's still mine. And sometimes, late at night, I dream of it. When I wake, there's dirt on my floor, and the faint smell of rot in the air. This was just the beginning of what happened. Because leaving the house didn't mean it was done with me. In fact, I think it followed me. After I left Briarwood House, I thought the nightmare was over. I moved into a small apartment in the city, far from the quiet, desolate town where that cursed house stood. For the first week, I convinced myself the change in environment would help me forget. I kept the lights on at night, left the TV playing softly while I slept, and avoided even thinking about 3:17 a.m. But deep down, I had a sinking feeling I hadn't escaped at all. The first sign came on the 9th night in the new apartment. I woke up gasping, not because of a nightmare, but because I could hear the sound of floorboards creaking, slow, deliberate steps, exactly like in Briarwood. My apartment doesn't even have wooden floors. I froze in bed, straining to hear. The steps grew louder, closer, until they stopped right outside my bedroom door. I told myself it was just my imagination, the residue of fear from before. But the next morning, there was something that made my skin crawl, a faint handprint on the door. The shape was strange, long fingers, the tips smudged as if they'd been pressed into the wood with damp, cold skin. I tried to bury myself in work, staying late at the office to avoid being home too much. But no matter where I was, strange things followed. Lights flickered in the office break room whenever I was alone. My phone would sometimes ring from an unknown number, and when I answered, I'd hear nothing but static and faint whispering that was impossible to make out. 2 weeks in, I had my first encounter. I was making coffee early in the morning when I saw movement in the corner of my eye. I turned, expecting to see a neighbor passing by the kitchen window, but the figure wasn't outside, it was inside. Standing in the corner, half hidden by shadows, was the same tall, faceless silhouette from Briarwood House. Its head tilted, just like before, studying me. My breath caught in my throat. Before I could move, it stepped backward into the wall, and vanished. That's when I knew for certain. It had followed me. From that day on, 3:17 a.m. became a cursed hour again. Every night, no matter when I went to bed, I'd wake at that exact time. Sometimes it was because I heard footsteps. Other times it was a knock, 3 slow knocks, on the bedroom wall. Once, I woke to find my phone recording on its own. When I played it back, I heard my own voice muttering in my sleep, "I'm coming back. I'm coming back," over and over. Sleep deprivation started to set in. My mind felt foggy, my body heavy. I began forgetting things, locking doors, where I put my keys, even small parts of conversations. Then the dreams returned, only now they were worse. The dark lake from before was still there, but this time I could see shapes beneath the surface, figures reaching up, their mouths open in silent screams. And every time, I could feel a presence behind me, waiting for me to turn around. One night, desperate for answers, I called Jacob, the only person who had witnessed even a fraction of what I went through. He didn't want to talk at first, said he'd been having nightmares ever since that night in Briarwood. But when I told him it had followed me, there was a long silence on the line before he whispered, "It's here too." We decided to meet in person. When Jacob arrived, I barely recognized him, dark circles under his eyes, pale skin, and an almost constant twitch in his hands. He told me that 2 nights after leaving my house, he woke up to see the shadow standing over his bed. Since then, he's heard whispers, felt cold hands touch his face, and sometimes found muddy footprints on his bedroom floor. "It's not just a haunting," he said, voice shaking. "It's attached to us. We tried everything, burning sage, sprinkling salt by the doors and windows, even bringing in a so-called spiritual healer. Nothing worked. The activity only grew stronger, almost as if it was mocking us." One night, during a video call, Jacob froze mid-sentence, his eyes going wide. "It's behind you," he whispered. I spun around, but saw nothing. When I turned back to the screen, Jacob was gone. The call had ended that I didn't hear from him again for 3 days. When he finally answered my texts, all he wrote was, "Don't come looking for me." That same night, I woke up to find my apartment colder than I'd ever felt before. My breath hung in the air like smoke. The lights wouldn't turn on, my phone was dead, and outside the window was nothing but pitch black. No city lights, no street lamps, nothing. Then came the sound of water dripping. I followed it to the bathroom. Inside, the tub was filled almost to the brim with dark water, rippling as if something had just moved beneath the surface that I backed away. But before I could leave, a pale, skeletal hand broke the surface of the water and gripped the edge of the tub. Then another. Slowly, a head began to rise, a face I couldn't fully see, except for hollow eyes that seemed to swallow the light. It leaned toward me, opening its mouth wider and wider until it was nothing but blackness. That I slammed the door shut and ran to the bedroom, locking it behind me. But almost immediately, I heard the slow creak of the doorknob turning from the other side. It didn't open. Instead, there came a whisper, right against the wood, "It's time." I didn't sleep that night. I didn't sleep the next one either. My body began to feel weak, my vision blurry. On the third day without rest, I started seeing it in broad daylight, reflected in windows, standing in crowds, always facing me. I tried to leave the city, thinking maybe it was tied to location. I booked a motel 2 hours away, but the first night there, I woke at 3:17 a.m. to find muddy footprints leading from the motel door to my bed. The smell of rot filled the room. And then, just like in Briarwood, the mattress dipped under an invisible weight. The voice came again, but this time, it was different, closer, more urgent. "You can't run. You belong to us now." In that moment, I understood. This wasn't a spirit trapped in a house. It was something ancient, something that had chosen me. And no matter where I went, it would follow. It wasn't haunting Briarwood House, it was using it, luring people in, marking them, and then never letting go. It's been weeks since I last heard from Jacob. I think it's taken him completely now. I'm next. I can feel it getting stronger, more present, as if it's closing in. Every night, the knocks grow louder. Every night, the whispers become clearer. I don't know how much longer I have before it finally takes me. But if you're hearing this, if you ever come across Briarwood House, don't go inside. Don't even look at it. Because once it sees you, it will never let you go, and if you wake up at 3:17 a.m. and hear footsteps, it's already too late.